Okay. Zarna is the nutritionist and she owns Nutralicious by Z. She has 2 children who keep her busy, but she has worked with infants and then up to elderly for their nutritional needs. So I'll go ahead and let Zarna take over, and then you should be able to go ahead and share your screen.
Thank you so much, Adrienne. That was a wonderful introduction. And yes, that's correct. Like I have been a dietitian for about 25 years and have worked in many different age groups, with many different age groups, many different health conditions. After working for about 17, 18 years into clinicals, I decided to go into private practice and making prevention and really helping people with making their lifestyle choices before a lot of health problems begin. So I'll go ahead and share my screen. I'm a little technically challenged, so give me just a second, bear with me, and I'll be happy to share my presentation. Can you see my screen okay?
Yes, we see your screen.
Yes. Okay, awesome. So let me go ahead and Awesome. Okay. So again, my name is Zarana Parekh, and just a little bit about me. We already talked a little bit, but I'm an integrative and functional dietitian, and the basic difference in a conventional approach versus a functional approach is that it really focuses on the whole body itself, focuses on root cause analysis, and really taking, even from a nutrition perspective, way deeper into micronutrients, how nutrient interact with each other, how supplements and nutrition interact with each other. So those are some of the areas that I really focus on. Some of the health conditions that I work a lot with is, one of them is definitely an autoimmune conditions, gastrointestinal diseases, and then cardiometabolic conditions, which includes and everything from blood pressure, diabetes to weight management, all of those things. So today, I'm super excited to be here because this is my favorite topic. This is all I know is nutrition. So thank you for having me today. And today we are going to talk about lupus and nutrition, and what the current science supports, what are some of the recommendations that are out there, and then how do you find what's the right one for you. So just like Adrienne said, again, this is not a medical or nutritional advice. You please consult with your healthcare provider before making any recommendations, and for individualized recommendations, because everybody is very different when it comes to what works for one versus the other. So just a little bit about lupus, which probably most of you would know all of these things, but it is an autoimmune condition. There are quite a few cases in US, about 1.5 million, and that could be, data could be different now, so it keeps updating all the time, and there are about 5 million cases worldwide. One of the difference between a lupus and any other autoimmune condition is that this is a systemic autoimmune condition, so it can affect many different parts of the body, versus thyroid or some of those autoimmune conditions can be organ specific. The exact cause for lupus is something that nobody has been able to really pinpoint yet, but there are many factors that play a role. There's genetics, environment plays a very big role, hormones, all of those things have been shown in research that they play a role in there. One of the thing that doesn't, like 90% of the people with lupus, they are from women category, and that's something that's just in general for autoimmune conditions that we see more women are more prone to an autoimmune condition. Symptoms, I'm not going to go into too much detail because I know you have another presentation going into the symptoms today, but some general symptoms, pain, chest pain, or overall joint pain, inflammation, feeling super tired. Those are some of the top ones that people really complain of when they either go to their medical provider or any healthcare practitioner, and other thing is just like fever with no known cause could be also one of the symptoms that's observed a lot of times with lupus. So as we talked about the inflammation, so there's a lot of research behind that lupus is an autoimmune and inflammatory condition. So it can cause inflammation of many different systems and organs. It can be pain, swelling, and those kind of symptoms in the body. So one of the key concepts comes with the treatment or intervention is how do you really support or keep that inflammation in check, and how do you control that? And that is one of the target area for many therapies when it comes to lupus management. Okay, so one of the things from a functional perspective, we really focus on the gut health and its connection to any autoimmune condition, very specifically also in lupus also. So Hippocrates, the father of modern medicine, had said several hundred years ago, every disease begins in the gut. And this is one of the principles that overall holistic approach really focus on, is that looking for the root causes and looking for the support of those systems. About 70% of our immune system is in the gut. So supporting gut really, really helps in supporting our immune system very well. So one of the main focus area is the gut. The gut microbiome, and there is enough evidence out there that the gut microbiome plays a very, very significant role when it comes to immune system and also when it comes to the lupus in general. So like we said, 70% of our immune system is in the gut. Changes in your microbiome can change dysregulate your immune system as well. And things that affect microbiome can be several things, including our diet is a big one. And that's the one focus area that we're going to be talking a lot about that. Gut microbiome also affects how our immune responses are there to different stimulus. So we could be exposed to certain things, but how our body reacts to that, the gut microbiome plays a very big role in that as well. So that's one very important area. Then comes the leaky gut. So I don't know if you may have heard of this concept, leaky gut or intestinal permeability. And this is something that's has been shown in research as one of the key components with inflammation or autoimmune conditions. And when we say leaky gut or intestinal permeability, what we are really focusing on is, so our normal gut lining is made up of single cells with these little finger-like projections on top. And each cell is connected to each other very tightly. And those are called tight junctions. So they are kind of holding hand together, protecting, acting like a barrier. Okay, here we are, it's a gate to your health in general. Due to several different factors, sometimes those gut lining, those tight junctions starts opening up, and that can create something called as an opening, which lets unwanted food particles, undigested food particles, or bacteria, toxins, all those things, an entry into our system, blood capillaries, and those kind of things. And that initiates an inflammatory response from our immune system, because those are recognized as unknown substances or not good. And so that creates a lot of inflammation in the gut area. Now, this is definitely targeted in the gut, but a gut inflammation is shown to be one of the big component when it comes to a systemic inflammation in general. So leaky gut is one of the very big area that you want to focus on. So goal is to keep the tight junctions in place and your gut functions in check. A lot of times people come to us, they may have a lot of GI issues, but that's not only indication that there could be a presence of intestinal permeability or a leaky gut. There are individuals who may have no GI issues and they could still have some intestinal permeability going on. So that's something that we want to be really focusing on. So what happens with if you have gut issues or if you have inflammatory conditions, one of the basic principles that we really focus on is let's focus on the gut healing. Gut is the core. And what do we do to really heal the gut? What helps in supporting gut? So it's not one thing. There's no magic pill, there's no magic food that can all just do one thing at a time, but it is the combination of several things that we do in our lifestyle that makes an impact. So the very first principle of gut healing is remove things that are negatively affecting your health. Now, it could be certain types of infections or bacteria, viruses, or it could be certain foods. If you are reacting to some foods, then you want to really focus on and removing those foods, because that is initiating or that is triggering the reaction in your gut health. So that's the first principle, is remove. The second principle is replace. Let's replace things that we are lacking in. Are we lacking in digestive enzymes? Are we not, or that supports our proper digestion? Are we not eating the right foods or the whole foods, unprocessed foods? And because those are considered as super anti-inflammatory, and we'll get into that much more in depth in a few minutes. The third R refers to is re-inoculate. And basically re-inoculate focuses on the gut microbiome. So we have, all of us have trillions of bacteria in our intestinal tract. Mostly we want all of them to be good bacteria, but sometimes we all come across situations where it can shift our microbiome towards the not very healthy microbiome. So what we want to work on is let's re-inoculate and repopulate the good bacteria in our system, so they can, because as we talked about, that they regulate a lot of immune system functions in general. The fourth R is repair that gut lining. We really want to put things back in place, how it's supposed to be there. So how do you really support? What are some of the functional foods that can help in healing the gut lining? And that we'll talk about. And then the last R is, so we could do all four R's. You remove, you put foods back, but unless and until you really rebalance your lifestyle choices, the first four R doesn't really support itself by on a long run. So your lifestyle makes the biggest impact. What are you eating? How are you sleeping? What are your stress management techniques? And those kind of things is very important as well. So it is a full circle. What do you do on day-to-day basis makes a big impact in general. So that's the basics of the overall gut healing principles. So as we talked about the basics, so I call them my 4 pillars of health, and this is something I talk to pretty much every single client that I work with, that I don't want you to come to me thinking I'm only going to give you a nutrition talk. I'm going to talk. It is literally equally divided into my sessions, that because it is 4 pillars, that's what keeps us really grounded, really stable. So nutrition is a very big pillar of what we eat. We are what we eat, what we digest, what we absorb, and that's what makes us. So we eat a lot of processed foods, a lot of junk food, fast foods. That's what starts affecting our health in general. Movement, and I like to call it more movement than the exercise, just because the moment we say exercise, it's like, it's boring. It's really not something that we want to do. But you don't have to necessarily have a gym workout to stay fit. You could be walk in nature, or swimming, or dancing. I mean, dancing is one of the things that we don't realize that could be a tremendous workout if we love the music and dance together. That's something that can be very, very, very good. Other thing is, we all are in a sitting job. Most of us are in a sitting job. Let me put it that way. We are sitting. I mean, for me also, like I'm like 9 to 5. I'm like sitting on my chair, talking to people, telling them to work out. So one of the things I do is, like, every hour I just get up and I walk a little bit. So I typically use like a Fitbit or some sort of, and again, I'm not endorsing any products here, but something that vibrates on my hand every hour, get up and move. So if you make a habit of like just walking 250 steps, just get up, Go blessed, get a glass of water, go use the restroom, walk around in your house. Because a lot of us are working from home nowadays. So that's another, if you are going to office, at least we walk from parking lot to the office or back and forth. Now we don't even do that. So get up and move. That really helps in moving things in our system. It supports reducing inflammation. So one of the things that a lot of times doesn't get talked about is that exercise reduces inflammation in our body. So some sort of movement as you are able to, of course, so listen to your body, listen to your provider, what's best for you, but do move. The third R refers to is the sleep, or the third pillar refers to the sleep, and a good quality sleep is extremely important. So we can, I sleep for 10 hours, I still don't feel rested, but that refers to the quality of the sleep. So focusing on a quality of your sleep, your good sleep hygiene, are you watching TV or screen till the last minute that you fall off to bed? Then that those blue light exposure has been shown in research that it affects the quality of our sleep very much. So melatonin, which is one of the hormones that our body releases at night, it is very, very beneficial from immune and inflammation reducing perspective. So something that we want to really focus on, and blue light exposure reduces that melatonin production in our body. So I always talk about sleep hygiene to my clients as well, and then stress management. And when it comes to any condition, I was reading a research article and said that about 70% of medical visits could have a component of stress in there. So it's super important that stress is something that we address, and stress increases all inflammatory markers in our body. So again, thinking lupus, inflammation, stress could definitely be playing a role in triggering some symptoms for us. So focusing on that. So again, 4 pillars. If one thing that every presentation, I always think of what is one thing that I'll take from you, and I'm going to say, remember the 4 pillars. And that's the one thing that I always want my clients to be remembering, that because that will really give you the balance that you are looking for. So this is one of my favorite quote by Dr. Mark Hyman, and he says, food has the power to heal us. It is the most potent tool we have to help prevent and treat many of our chronic diseases. So really, let's take a moment and think, what are we really putting in our body on a day-to-day basis, okay? So then comes nutrition approaches, right? So now we're going to really focus on nutrition. So as with everything, nutrition field there is no one consistent answer for many different things. You will have different opinions, different researchers support a lot of things, because lupus is an inflammatory condition that affects different people in a different way. I would say that there are definitely multiple approaches that have been shown to be effective in research and in practical life with people. But again, really learning what are some of your symptoms, what are some of your effects of lupus in your body, and choosing the right approach would be the right one. So the 3 approaches that have been proposed a lot in research and practiced by many practitioners, one of them is an autoimmune paleo diet, which is basically focuses on removing a lot of inflammatory foods out of the diet. Number one thing, sugars and things like that. It also focuses on basically protein, vegetables, and some good fats. So that's kind of the autoimmune protocol. There is also some studies and some theories that support a plant-based whole foods diet, which is completely, again, the emphasis here is anti-inflammatory foods in general. So lots and lots of vegetables, and then instead of eating the meat as a protein, then you eat the beans and legumes and nuts and seeds as the protein foods. But and I'll talk about some of the common things in each of them as well. And then the third theory or third diet that has been shown a significant improvement in reducing inflammation in general is Mediterranean diet, which is more of a balance. I would say it's kind of in combination of the two that you could choose, that between the autoimmune or the plant-based whole foods. The Mediterranean diet, again, super rich in high fiber foods and low glycemic foods. Those are some of the major principles of the Mediterranean diet. Now, they all have different principles to go by, but one common theme in all of them is that eat unprocessed foods, eat whole foods, and eat anti-inflammatory foods. Now, you could have a different principle that you may like an autoimmune paleo versus you may like a plant-based protocol, and that's absolutely fine depending on what type of symptoms or what type of involvement you have, what other organ involvement you have with lupus. There may not be one approach that's best for every single one. So that is where I recommend that work individually with your practitioner to find which one would be an appropriate. No matter what approach you take, the goal is going to be eat unprocessed and eat a lot of plant-based vegetables in general. So because vegetables are the anti-inflammatory. So I don't want to gear you towards this is the only approach or the other one. I want to really give you the whole spectrum that these are all really good approaches out there. Find what works for you. So just an example, like, if you have, a lot of times with lupus, there could be some individuals can have kidney disease involvement and all of those. And sometimes you have to be really careful with the protein intake in that particular scenario. And if that's the case, then maybe going a little more heavy on a plant-based whole foods diet, because that's not as heavy in protein compared to a paleo diet is going to be. So that's the kind of a difference that I'm really focusing on, that you could have a little bit different approach for your health and wellness in general. So optimize your diet. That's basically what I call it, rather than let's go one route, one diet fits all. Doesn't work at all in general. So optimize your diet, and anti-inflammatory diet is what I recommend. So what are some of the basics of anti-inflammatory diet? You want to really, really focus on heavy intake of vegetables. And I like the rainbow. I like the rainbow when it comes to vegetables, because there is, again, not one superfood, not one power food that can have all the nutrition in there. The leafy vegetables have very good anti-inflammatory properties. They also support our detoxification very, very well. So that's one major vegetable group that I focus a lot with my clients. So every day, focus on at least 1 or 2 serving of a leafy vegetable in your diet. Now, it could be spinach or kale or collard greens, and rotate that. And I'll talk a little bit about the variety also. Broccoli, Brussels sprouts, cauliflower, those are called the brassica family of vegetables, and they are #1 vegetables when it comes to supporting the liver detoxification cycle. So those are very, very important to have them in your diet also. Most vegetables are very rich in fiber. So that is one of the key thing that we want to do, because fiber really helps in reducing that glycemic index of the food, or so it doesn't have a lot of impact of increasing the blood sugar, and also keeping us full for a longer time. So that's very important. And then the phytonutrients, or the micronutrients that are in the vegetables, that are very supportive in reducing inflammation. Antioxidants. Now, antioxidants are these little compounds that help in fighting something called oxidative stress in our body. So these are all wonderful foods that have very rich antioxidants in them. And the deeper, the darker the color, just think that you are getting a lot more nutrition. Now, not to say that iceberg lettuce is not helpful. Don't eat that. No, it's not. And that is why I put it on a rainbow. Rainbow has multiple colors. And that's where I would recommend you to be eating a lot of those. When it comes to the quality of the food, one of the areas that we have been really learning a lot about is that use of pesticides, and a lot of things have increased over last couple of decades drastically, and the GMO foods also. Now, in general, GMO foods, or conventionally raised foods or conventionally grown foods, could have a higher intake of pesticides, and those are definitely damaging to our gut microbiome. So my recommendation is try to eat as much clean as you can. If the cost becomes a prohibitive factor with organic, then you can totally try to wash your vegetables really well if you cannot get all organic. Environmental Working Group puts out every year, at the beginning of the year, they come out with a dirty dozen list. And basically what it means is the top 12 foods that are sprayed with the most chemicals or pesticides in general. So if you can't do everything everything organic, try to see if you can do some of those 12 foods at least organic, and that can at least help reduce the toxins. Sometimes some clients will argue with me, but I'm eating some organic and some non-organic, so it doesn't matter because I'm still getting it. Still matters. So the way I explain to you is our body, everybody has a toxic load bucket. The sooner we load up our bucket faster, the sooner we can have the side effects from those in general. So and that also puts more burden on our body for the detoxification. So those are some of the things that I just focus. Do the best. Now again, if you cannot do everything, that's absolutely okay. If you cannot do any, that's absolutely still okay. I still want you to eat a lot of vegetables in general. That's going to be anyway better than any processed packaged food that you open up in general. Okay. The other thing is the healthy fats. And this is an area it's the most debatable area. Is fat good? Is fat bad? Is it really can't decide in between? What we really want to focus on, and I'm going to highlight right here, is the healthy fats. We really want to focus on the healthy fats because they have some really good anti-inflammatory properties. What we are really focusing on is things like omega-3 fats, which are something that we tend to be a little bit lacking in general. So as an average American diet has a proportion of omega-6 to omega-3, which is like about 20 to 30 to 1, like 20 times omega-6 to 1 time of omega-3. The recommended amount of omega-6 to omega-3 is 4 times omega-6 to 1 time omega-3. So we really want to bump up on our omega-3 fats. So some of the foods that are really rich in that is going to be your fatty fish. If you choose to eat fish, that's a good source of that. If you choose to go the plant-based, then the seeds are the one of your best sources for the omega-3 fats. So hemp seeds, flax seeds, walnuts, pecans, those are some of amazing foods for your good fats in general. And then avocado provides something called as monounsaturated fats, which is very, very helpful for our body. It is one of the very good fat in general. And then the fiber. Every avocado is a very high fiber food. So it's a very beneficial food in general. Olives, which is one of the prominent thing in any Mediterranean regimen or diet that you would see. So avocado, olives, nuts, seeds, fatty fish, those are all some really good foods to include as a fat source in our diet. Again, when we say fats, we really want to be mindful. We're not talking about the fries and the nuggets of the world. So really want to be focused on the healthy fats as nature has made it by that itself. And then the good quality protein. Now, protein is really important for our every single cell. Like our cells are made up of little amino acids. So that cell building needs protein. Our DNA structures needs protein. So it's important. You don't have to be very high protein or very low protein. Just whatever your normal weight is and a balanced protein for that. And depending on what lifestyle you choose, it could be a good quality meat or fish, or it could be from lentils and nuts and seeds. It can be absolutely be included in your regimen, and that provides good protein in general for your supporting your muscle mass, your cell structure, all of those things, and then the DNA synthesis as well. So those are some very important facts to keep in mind. Some beneficial foods. I really want to take some time and talk about, and I call them functional foods because they are food. They are food, they're not supplement, they're absolutely food. So what helps in supporting our gut health as one of the main thing, and by supporting gut, it supports our immune system as well. So bone broth or a vegetable mineral broth is something that has a very good gut healing properties because it has certain amino acids in there, which has a very supportive effect on the gut health healing in general. So you may recall, when we fall sick, it's just drink chicken broth throughout the day, or chicken, or for vegetarians, it's like just drink some sort of broth clear broth in general. So what are we getting in nutrition? There's no calories, there's not much fiber or anything in there, but there is something called amino acids, which are very supportive for gut healing. So that's something that I would recommend to make it a part of your regimen. That, you know, half a cup, you don't need to again drink a gallon of that or nothing of that sort, but half a cup of warm bone broth. I do recommend adding some turmeric to that while you are cooking it, because turmeric again will have as a amazing anti-inflammatory properties. So focusing on that gut healing as number one goal for here. And then the fermented foods. And I cannot speak enough about fermented foods. So fermented foods or cultured foods are something that are basically fermented with just water and salt. And it can be multiple vegetables that you can ferment. You can do this simply at home, or you can buy commercially available as well. So sauerkraut or kimchi or fermented carrots. These are some of those power foods that I call them, because they have those good bacteria in them. And again, you have to really monitor your tolerance. If some individuals have a lot of bloating or gut symptoms, starting straight up on a fermented food may not be perfect for you, because your body has, if you have a lot of overgrowth of certain bad bacteria in your system, and when you give a lot of fermented foods, it starts to ferment and give you the bloating symptoms. So again, find what's the right amount for you, and again, start slow. You don't have to really go all like a whole jar of it, but you know, one tablespoon to 2 tablespoons of some sort of fermented foods is actually very beneficial, because remember, you are re-inoculating those good bacteria in your system. So my approach is like, you know, support your system, provide what it needs so it can work on its own a lot better than what it's doing right now. And that's something that I really recommend for you also. So definitely check on, if you have not tried fermented food, I encourage you to give it a try. Start with a tablespoon a day kind of thing, okay? Some of the other fermented foods are, if you are not a fermented vegetable type of a person, you could also do some sort of yogurt, like, you know, coconut yogurt or almond milk yogurt, or even if you tolerate dairy, okay, you could also do a regular dairy yogurt or a goat milk yogurt. Those are some very good foods that also have good bacteria in them. So those are all part of your fermented foods category. Diversity. Now, diversity is very, very important. So even when it comes to our eating, we really, really want to be focusing on our diversity. So it is said that our ancestors used to eat close to 250 to 300 foods over a period of a year, whereas what an average American now eats is about 20 to 25 foods on an average. Like, and many of you may witness, you know, your grocery cart from week to week is exact same. you go to the grocery, you exactly know which aisle you walk in, you pick up those foods, even with the vegetables. So it is very important that we really focus on diversity. And the way to do that is I typically just recommend pick a group, leafy vegetables, and keep rotating within that. 1 week you buy spinach, next week you buy the other leafy vegetables. And it doesn't have to be rocket science. It's super easy to remember that way. And that could be something. Same thing in the brassica family. You know, to get into cauliflower, then go to Brussels sprout, then go to broccoli. And by eating the same group, but you've now added that diversity. And every food has a different micronutrient content and a different antigenic properties in there. So it's very beneficial. Eating local and seasonal really, really helps you in getting those nice variety that you're looking for. So one thing that I recommend, that, you know, every month you can just kind of, you know, Google, which a lot of us do a lot of Googling in general. So just Google what's in season in May. And on the 1st of May, you do that and you start, okay, so it will give you a list of vegetables and fruits that are in season currently. And again, I'm not saying that you will not eat any other vegetable during that month, but 80% of your vegetable intake should be from that list for that month, because then automatically by comes June, by comes August, you are eating some different vegetables. They are in season, they are usually cheaper. So that's one very helpful tip right there. They usually don't have a lot of added stuff, like, you know, trying to grow a berry and keeping it good in a super cold winter type of thing, they may have to use some sort of chemicals to keep it even presentable at the grocery store in general. So those are some of the things to be mindful, that try to eat local and seasonal as much as you can. I do like a lot of like farmers market, because you get straight food from the farm to your house, and that's something that's really good, instead of getting something all across from the country to us. There's definitely going to be use of some sort of additional stuff in there, and that's something that can be done better with the diversity. So that comes to what not to eat. Okay, so as I said, in general, again, it's mainly the processed foods, the simple sugars. I think, and one of the things that has been such a big disadvantage to our generation is that we've been so worried about the fat by last couple decades. Is like, fat is all bad, fat is all bad. So by reducing the fat intake, what has gone up is the sugar intake. And if you go to a grocery aisle, and this is something that I've done myself, I've walked in, like, let me go check it. Everything's low fat, low fat, low fat, low fat, low fat. And anything that's a low fat, to make it a little bit better, they go up on the intake, addition of the sugars in general. And I'm talking processed foods. I'm not talking natural foods by itself, but the simple sugar. And sugar is very inflammatory in nature. It's extremely inflammatory in nature. Sugar is also very addictive in nature. And I don't know, you can practice this. You eat a little, you want more. You eat more, you want even more. And this just keeps going on and on and on. So I do challenge you. I know, take time, take a maybe 2-week or 3-week sugar challenge, and just give it up. And you will find amazing improvement in how you feel, in your energy levels, but also that cravings that sometimes keeps us in the loop of eating sugar in general. It definitely reduces a lot. So just start with the small goals, like, okay, I'll just do it for a week. I'll do it for a couple of weeks, and see how, find a partner that works really good. If you and your friend both need to eat healthy, let's do it something together that helps you a lot. And then the high fructose corn syrup, which is another area where there's a lot of inflammatory properties in there. High fructose corn syrup is super sweet by taste. If you taste sugar, and high fructose corn syrup is super sweet. And what has happened is that our sweet thresholds have really gone up, and that's what makes us crave for even more sweets all the time in general. Refined carbohydrates and white flour, so cookies and breads and cakes and things like that, those are very, very inflammatory. Now, again, no matter which diet principles you follow, these are some of the foods that are recommended to avoid in all of them. And that's why you could not go wrong when you try to avoid those in general. And then the inflammatory oils, which are used for a lot of like frying of the fries and stuff like that. So corn oil, canola oil, margarine, those are some of the very, very inflammatory fats that we want to stay off of. So yes, these are the fats. When we say avoid the fat, these are the bad fats. That's what we want to really avoid in general. What about gluten? And I'm sure this has come up many times. You hear, yes, gluten is bad. Gluten is not necessary. If you don't have celiac, you should not worry about gluten. But I can tell you one of the things, and research has shown that gluten does increase inflammation in the body by affecting the gut health, because gluten produces certain compound called zonulin, and there is enough research on that you can see, find yourself. But zonulin increases that intestinal permeability, or the leaky gut in general. So you really want to take a moment and think about, there are many factors that plays a role with the gluten. One of them is all the chemicals that are used and sprayed on this some of these grains, including gluten, which is one of the big ones, is the glyphosate that disrupts the gut microbiome, dysbiosis, or the imbalance in the gut bacteria, and that could be indirectly playing a role, even though you may not have any autoimmune celiac or gluten related issues. it might be a good idea to really consider maybe limiting it or even taking it out. And I in general recommend, like, bread is a processed food, whether it's a gluten containing bread or a gluten-free bread. It's a very processed foods in general. So focus on whole grains by itself. A cooked bowl of quinoa is always better than a slice of any bread, whether it's a gluten containing or a gluten free. But this is something that so years ago it was like, no, if you have celiac, yes, you should avoid gluten. But there is enough evidence coming up that gluten does increase the intestinal permeability and the inflammation evidence in that. Okay. Other thing is alfalfa sprouts or seeds, which are something this is very specific for lupus because it has one of the compounds called L-cannabinine, which aggravates the autoimmune response in lupus. So it is recommended that you should avoid that particular food in general. Then comes the nutraceuticals. So nutraceuticals are these little compounds that have some really amazing health benefits. And one of my favorite, and as you can probably tell, like I grew up in India, so turmeric is like our one of the staple spice in our spice box in every single household in India. But turmeric and ginger have a very good anti-inflammatory properties. They have certain compounds called curcumin, and the ginger has gingerol, which really helps in regulating the immune hyperactivity. And that's, as you can think of, in an autoimmune condition, what you want to really do is keep supporting your immune system to balance out, not overreact. You don't want that overreactions as well. The second really good food from a nutraceutical perspective is a green tea or a matcha, depending on whatever you like and whatever you can get hold of. But green tea has some really good antioxidants called EGCG, and that helps in reducing inflammation in the body as well. Green tea also has something called L-theanine, which is a component that just keeps you really calm and gives you energy at the same time. So it's a calm energy. That's what the green tea is really beneficial for. So it could be really a good drink to have as part of your regimen. And then the rooibos tea is another very, very supporting of antioxidant properties and then anti-inflammatory tea. So I typically recommend more as a teas kind of, so you could have a cup of tea. I'm a big supporter of like just, a warm cup of tea can do wonders. It can reduce your intake of coffee maybe a lot of times, so that can be helpful. And then also sometimes, instead of any sort of alcohol or anything like that, a cup of warm tea or even iced tea from one of these herbal teas can be a very good replacement that way. Then comes to tips to eating healthy. So how do we really make it a reality, right? I mean, it's all good information, but then I don't have time. I don't have energy to cook and all of this. So keep it simple is one thing that I definitely recommend. You do not have to plan for very exotic meals or anything like that. A protein, roasted vegetables, and half an avocado. That could be a very simple meal that you could do. You could do some soups that can be very healthy to do that. Plan a little bit ahead. If you wait till 6 o'clock and at the dinner time to decide what am I going to eat, most likely it will end up being something like a fast food, which is not very healthy. So plan ahead. One of the things that I usually do is over the weekend. So Friday night or Saturday morning, that's one of the things that I do is, okay, what are some of the things that I want to really cook in this week? Okay. Meal prep can be in many different ways. You could do, one of the things I do is I just have my vegetables that are chopped and ready to go for the week. So we quickly fix them in a stir fry or roasting or something like that. So when it comes to after a work day, that there's no time to really start chopping the vegetables, but if it's already pre-chopped, and I typically store them in like a glass container to minimize the nutrition loss also. So that can be part of the thing, or you could use a frozen vegetables. So those are something that can be and they are already pre-chopped, most of them are. So that actually saves time as well. Smoothies can be a really, really great way to sneak a lot of nutrition in there. But remember, smoothies are not supposed to be just ice cream and fruit and milk. That's not a smoothie we are talking about. Our smoothie should have about 4 to 5 components in there. Some base for your smoothie. So it could be a non-dairy milk or a yogurt or something of that nature. Some type of protein. So you could use either a protein powder or nuts as a protein also. That can be, or nut butter can be a good protein. A vegetable, and that's a must in the smoothie because that really adds that fiber that you want. So spinach goes very well in a smoothie, kale goes very well, cucumber, zucchini. If you have never tried zucchini, I really encourage you to try zucchini in your smoothie because it has no taste of its own. It blends very well in there. One of the fruits, and again, rotate the fruits. It doesn't have to be only one fruit all the time. And then some sort of nuts or seeds. I really encourage, either a hemp seed or a chia seed or a flax seed, and that can be very healthy fat. You are adding that omega-3 fats to your smoothie, and this really gives you that balance that you need to keep your blood sugar stable, keep you full, and power pack with your nutrition in general. So that can be extremely healthy way to support either addition to meal or be a meal by itself. If you have all 5 components, you could totally make it a meal by itself as well. Okay. Some of the nutraceuticals or like a supplemental, so probiotics. I mean, we talked enough about the gut bacteria, gut microbiome. So food first. I do want to really emphasize that I want you to eat better first with the probiotic rich foods and the vegetables. But sometimes there can be a role where you could use a good quality probiotic to really support your gut microbiome in general. Vitamin D plays a very important role in immune system in general. And one thing to definitely know is check your levels first. Do you know what your vitamin D levels are? If they are low, vitamin D deficiency has been prevalent in many autoimmune conditions. So I definitely encourage you to ask your doctor, if they can check your levels. And if you are deficient, then supplementing it, spending some time in sunshine. Now, I know that can be tricky for some people if they have the skin reactions or anything like that. So talk with your doctor what would be the best way to get your vitamin D level in a good range, because that is one thing that really supports our immune system in a big way. Stress. So again, we talked a little bit about the stress, and this is something that I really like to take this moment and, we all have stress, So I used to have in my questionnaire, how are you stressed? I took that question out because everybody answered yes for like many years. So now I just say, okay, how much stress do you have? And what do you do for it? Let's just focus on what do we do for it. So anything that de-stresses you on a every single day basis. It's not like you do once a month or something like that. You could go for a retreat once in 3 months. That's good. But that's not only thing that can be helpful. You really want to focus on a day-to-day basis. So breathing, one of the very simple thing that I really like is breathing. So you can do some simple breathing even at your office desk or right before going into a meeting or something, is alternate nostril breathing. And the way to do that is you just use your thumb and your pinky, and you close your one nostril and you breathe through the right first. Close your both the nostril and then open your left and you breathe out. And then you do the reverse. Now you breathe in from left and then breathe out from right. So you're doing alternate nostril. By doing this, there's a lot of evidence that supports that it really calms down your mind, your vagus nerve, which is one of the main active nerve in that connects our gut and our brain together, and that really gets calmed down, and that helps in relieving stress very nicely. If you believe in any sort of prayer, that could be a great way to do that as well. Certain essential oils can be very relaxing for you if you are not sensitive to smells. You really have to know whether that works for you or not. And then the music can be very, very beneficial as well. So include some or one of those strategies on a consistent basis. There are many apps that you can download that are free, and they have guided meditation. There's many YouTube videos on there as well. So use something or the other. And one of the best times to do meditation could be right before bedtime, because when you go to bed with that relaxed mind, it could help quality of your sleep. So your one pillar is supporting the other pillar, and I think that can be beautiful in general for us. So 10 minutes before the bedtime, just get into some sort of meditation and fall asleep with the meditation. That would be really helpful for you. So this is what I say. Food is the most powerful medicine that can heal as well as nourish. So it doesn't do one thing, it does both of those things. Let's try to get as much, reap the benefits from the food as much as we can, and using food as our natural approach, because we all take supplements, some of us take supplements, some of us take medications, all of those things. But one of the common thing in all of us is we all eat. We all eat. So food is something that's always going to be part of our life, part of every gathering that we meet at, every culture, no matter where you come from. Food plays a central role in our life in general. So let's really think before what we put next bite in our mouth. Okay. And it's again, it's not that you only eat 100% vegetables only. No, it should be a big part of your diet in general. That's what I, okay. So let's rethink. Let's really take a moment and rethink about everything. We talk a lot about, there's a lot of science about genetics. This is all because of genetics. Yes, it could be genetics does play a role in many health conditions, but environment and our lifestyle plays a bigger role than the genetics by itself. So even if we could be carriers for certain genes, our lifestyle can really make a big impact on whether we express those genes or no. And that's a science, whole new science called epigenetics, where how our environment affects our genetic expressions in general. So let's really rethink and balance out what we are eating and lifestyle. So I'll take a pause right there. This is, if you have any questions, I know we do want to save some time for questions. This is my website. If you ever need to contact with me, that you can reach me at this website. So thank you so much. That was really good talking about my favorite topic to you.
Yeah, thank you. We did have a few questions, and then if anyone does have questions, you can always unmute yourself and ask, or put it in the chat box.
Sure.
But we have, is there something in particular we should seek or avoid for cognitive clarity?
Cognitive clarity really relates back to, again, so it's part of the whole inflammatory process in general. So things that support lowering the inflammation can be something, the big area, the gut healing. There's this whole concept that, the brain fog or something like, but leaky gut really plays a key role in the brain fog as well. So just focusing on your gut health. There are certain things that can be helpful if you, again, tolerate. So there are certain types of mushrooms, like a turkey tail mushroom or reishi mushrooms, though, that have been shown to help with that clarity in general. So you could include that. Again, check with your practitioner if that's the right choice for you or not.
Okay. And then how do we know if we need probiotics, enzymes, or a little bit of both?
Again, that would be dependent on your digestive symptoms. If you have a tons of GI symptoms, bloating, gas, diarrhea, or constipation, those are all indications of lack of digestion in general, and that could be a good place to have some sort of enzymes. But as far as probiotics, whether you do it as a supplemental form, regardless, I do want you to focus on fermented foods and some sort of probiotic rich foods in general. So I would say we all need probiotics, not necessarily as a supplement only, but we all need probiotic rich foods. And one thing to remember, if you do take a probiotic, the food for those bacteria is fiber. So if you could take 50 billion, but if you don't eat fiber, you are really not helping those bacteria do their job. So if you take a probiotic, remember to support it with the fiber in general. And then again, if you take a probiotic, it makes you feel great, then that's a good indication. So listen to your body is definitely a good way to go about. But if you take a probiotic and you start like having symptoms, and because there are certain strains of probiotic that some people don't tolerate well. So if that's something like that, then you may want to take a break and maybe focus more on a food-based probiotic for that reason.
And then we have, I've read avoiding dairy and nightshades are important. Dairy because it's inflammatory, but I'm not sure what nightshades do or what they are.
Yeah, so thank you for bringing it up. And I actually wanted to put that in my presentation. But again, like I said, I want to really give you a more of a central approach in general, because it could be individual. Dairy sensitivity is something that that is definitely increasing a whole lot. And if you have a good tolerance for dairy and you want to keep in some limited quantities, you could be okay. But just like gluten, dairy is one of the protein which has casein in there, and a certain types of casein can be very inflammatory in nature. So some individuals cannot tolerate any sort of dairy, but there are individuals who may do okay with a goat milk, goat-based milk, or there is something called A2 casein, which is definitely something that is showing up a lot in research, that the A2 casein can be much easier to digest and assimilate, and hence may not cause as much inflammation in general. So dairy is very individual, and that's one of the reasons it's not on there. But yes, if you have had issues with dairy, then I would definitely recommend that it's a good idea to pull the dairy out. When it comes to the nightshade vegetables, it has certain compounds in there which can be inflammatory. Again, it is very individual. It's not necessarily that for every single person that it does. So what are nightshade vegetables for some of the people who may not know? It's the tomato, potato, eggplant, and certain types of peppers are called a nightshade family of vegetables because they grow at night, basically. And they have certain compounds called alkaloids in them, which can be inflammatory for some individuals. It's very specifically if somebody has anything like an arthritis type of conditions, or a joint pain and inflammation, then even short-term taking it out can be beneficial. But again, it's not something that every single person is going to react to a nightshade. So finding whether it's one for you or no, you can definitely talk with your dietitian or your doctor.
So they've heard people talk about prebiotics, but is that something that you need to take with probiotics as well?
Yeah, so prebiotics are basically your fiber, mainly the fiber. So that's what. So yes, you could take a prebiotic as a supplement, but again, the vegetables, like all your onions and garlics and cauliflower and jicama, and those are those have something called resistant starch and the prebiotics, so that can be absolutely beneficial. So there's a prebiotic, there's a probiotic, and there's a postbiotic. They all play a really important role in our GI system. So when you take a probiotic, you want to supplement with a fiber containing prebiotic containing fiber mainly. It could be in a form of food, and I really like more of a food-based prebiotic in general, because that helps you eat more vegetables. So it does two things at the same time: anti-inflammatory benefits as well. And then the postbiotics are basically something called as short chain fatty acids, which are basically produced as a byproduct of when our body processes the probiotics. So those are some of the things that are very beneficial for our gut microbiome in general. So that's something that you really focus on. But the key thing is, you need those good bacteria in there to do anything good in general, and then the food for them, which is the fiber in general.
And then we have one last questions before we stop. I've
Okay.
heard probiotics from foods and kombucha can help adjust your cravings. Is that true?
Yes. So probiotics from any good source can do that, because the way probiotics, again, what it does is it's balancing the good and not so very good, kind of more of the predominant good ones in there. What are, like, a lot of times cravings are as a result of imbalance of your microbiome or the gut bacteria. So if you have an overgrowth of something called yeast or fungus, which all of us have in our system, some sort of yeast and fungus is part of our microbiome. But when the yeast overgrowth happens, something called candida or yeast, what it does is it makes you crave a lot of sugar, because the food for yeast and candida is sugar and carbs. So when you have a lot of overgrowth of those, and when you're taking a probiotic, you are rebalancing the microbiome or shifting it more towards the good, and that can indirectly help you with taking care of your cravings for sure. So yeah. And then fiber with that. So fiber will, the more fiber you eat, you are fuller for longer time. It keeps your blood sugar stable. So that also affects with the cravings, because a lot cravings, another reason is also blood sugar imbalances can cause a lot of sugar cravings as well. So keeping your sugar stable, keeping your good bacteria stable, yes, you can make a big impact with your cravings with that.
Okay, wonderful. Well, thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule to talk with us today. It was very informative. Everyone, I suggest visiting her website, nutriliciousbyz.com. If you have questions about it or want me to send you the information about it, just give me an email, info@lupuslone-star.org. But thank you again, Zarana, and we hope to hear from you again in the future.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. This was really a pleasure having all of you here. And thank you for listening. Yeah.
Yes.